everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Tales from the Gig, your favorite podcast for musicians by musicians. I am Colin.
I'm Kevin, and I'm still the same Kevin. I just look different.
It's true.
Trust me.
Yeah, he's allowed the hair to run free on this fine evening.
First for everything.
That's right. We're coming to you live from the Rebel Base Studios here in wonderful Enola, Pennsylvania. I hope you guys had a good week. This week's episode is featuring the incomparable, the great Mr. Barry Richman, guitar player to the Stars, Atlanta mainstay and legend. And it was a pretty good conversation, Kevin. Didn't you think so?
Yeah, I mean, you had mentioned him before. I really didn't know of him because I'm not from that scene. But, man, check out his website, which is barryrichman.com, by the way. And, you know, the guy's with Marshall Tucker Band, Allman Brothers, Les Paul, Zac Brown Band.
Yes.
Those are pretty big names.
His gig stories were pretty amazing because they all involved some ridiculously famous act, like swinging by one of his gigs and jamming with him. Like,
crazy,
when Greg and the guys came by, I was like, oh, shit, he's talking about Greg Allman.
Right.
But
very charismatic as
he
well.
is, yeah, and we were lucky enough he had his guitar with him. It was our first live performance that we had here on Tales from the Gig, and he played us a couple songs, and it's anytime I can sit and listen to Barry play guitar for a little while, it's a good night.
That one intro, we won't spoil it.
Yeah.
Was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and just off the top of his head, just for fun.
Yep.
But big week in music this week. The Grammy Awards, whether you love them or hate them, were this week. And there were highs and lows, I guess. I didn't watch it. I'm pretty sure Kevin didn't watch it.
No, I didn't watch it either. Everybody saw my Facebook post. But.
Yeah. But it was kind of cool to see that some real musicians did come home with awards and were nominated. Willie Nelson still kicking and won, of course, a country award. Chris Stone, Kingfish Ingram was nominated for a contemporary or traditional blues.
That's really cool.
Which is really cool. He's coming through Harrisburg next month.
Yeah, the end of February 28th.
Yep.
Day before my birthday.
Yeah, when I'm headed to Savannah, so I'm not going to be able to see.
Oh, jeez, yeah. And I have gig that night.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So hopefully, if anybody's in the Harrisburg area, they can get out and see Kingfish.
It's Club XL.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Kebmo won the Americana Award, which I thought that was really cool that a real traditional blues artist won an award outside of the genre.
Yeah.
Kind of shows that how wide Americana kind of used to be acoustic country, and it's definitely expanded. The fact that Kebmo put out a blues record and won the Americana Award. And Delbert McClinton, a great blues scene icon, won the Traditional Blues Award, and Gary Clark Jr. won the Contemporary. So it was...
Yeah.
Like we said, love them or hate them, but...
yeah, I mean, they have their place. It's just, there was an article online that I reposted by Todd Zuckerman, who's the drummer for Styx, and he's also an educator and everything. But anyhow, he talked about how it's unfortunate that, you know, back in our day, or my day early on, and I'm about the same age as him, you know, there's videos you get to see Tony Williams, Buddy Rich, early David Sanborn, Herbie Hancock, these guys that were out in the... You know, you got to see them in a lot of performances, and that's what made a lot of us, or helped a lot of us, pick up a guitar or a pair of sticks or something like that. And it seems to be more about pop and dance, and as far as what gets to the air. And see, a lot of people don't know there's so many more awards.
Oh, well, there's a whole separate ceremony at a different location that doesn't get on TV. That's where most of the awards that we would ever have a chance of getting nominated for are given.
And, I mean, it's just how it works. But
Yep.
But I had heard that Usher did a hell of a performance, so I'll have to go check that out.
Yeah, and there's always ups and downs with shows like that. But it was nice to see on Facebook today all the blues societies that I follow posting up that some real musicians are getting recognized, which is really cool.
Yeah.
That they can still separate the wheat from the chaff with some stuff.
Yep.
Kevin, what gigs did you have this week? Tell us your tales from the gig.
I had a couple since we last recorded or whatever, but I was with Andy Alonso and friends over in Palmyra, and just so a lot of people don't know, we're like, oh, this big place. No. So we're trying to figure out what type of rig to set up, and I figured, should I bring the cajon? Oh, it's a little bit more, so I went with the kick drum. Walk in, and the space is maybe a little bit bigger than what we got here.
Nice.
And it's a 4-piece band.
Yeah.
So
Cozy. It was intimate, an intimate
yes,
setting.
I'm here with drums, and the piano player is right here.
Right.
The bass player is right next
Using
to
your
me.
hi-hats as a piano stand.
Exactly, yeah. But amazingly enough, it was just phenomenal. I mean, they're all some great players. Jason Holler on bass, Andy Roberts on piano and keys, and Andy Alonso on guitar. But I mean, it was, as I said to you in a text, it was. I experienced one of those moments that it's crack for us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
You're there, and all of a sudden you're out of body, and everything.
No
is
offense
just,
to any crackheads that might be listening.
Yeah, no offense. That's a good thing, actually. A good
Right. It's good crack.
Good crack. There we go. But yeah, it's like you're out of body, and everything's just flowing, and then like everybody at the end of the song is looking around like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah,
type of thing.
yeah.
You know,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love those. That's why
we
keep
do
doing it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, feels so good.
Very cool.
You went to Atlanta.
I did. Yeah, I traveled back to my home and native land. We were I was in Georgia. Last weekend. So yeah, went and Saturday night I played at Maxwell Cigar Bar, recorded a live record, which I'm very excited about. Keep an eye out, colinalvarez.com. That will be out sooner than my studio record that everyone's been waiting on for half a decade. So we set mics up, got good recording, had some great guest players, including Max Levitan, who's going to be on an upcoming episode.
All right.
Sit in, we got it all on tape, as they say. So that'll be out hopefully in the next month or two. But yeah, that was Saturday night. Then Sunday, myself, Joel Edwards, Mike Boutte, and Anthony Mancini took part in Soundhouse Part 3 or Volume 3. I don't know if we're doing volume or part, but it was a cool thing that Mike had started at his house in Madison, Georgia, last year, I guess it was, or the year before, where he's got a really great setting, both aesthetically and aurally, and it's a very creative environment. His house, it's a 200-year-old like farmhouse, basically.
Cool. Yeah.
You know,
Nice
15-foot ceilings, and great vibe. I recorded all the vocals on my record to be released at some point there, and we had done some other recording with Mike, but he wanted to start this kind of artist collective, I guess is the best way to describe it. Musicians coming in, some of us have played together, some of us maybe haven't. All are welcome, and we go in with no game plan except no cover music, and we basically sit down and write. The first one we got, I think, 2 songs written. The second one we did 1 or 2, and this time we did 2. All spur of the moment. One of us comes up with a melody. I mean, it's true improvisation. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a blast. And Mike's a great drummer. Mike's a great guitar player also. He usually plays drums for these events. Anthony Mancini is a monstrous guitar player. If you guys can check him out on Instagram or Facebook, I think it's just the Anthony Mancini. He plays with a group of killers in Atlanta called the Band of Misfits. It's all these guys that their day gig is touring with like Snoop Dogg and Bobby Brown and all these guys, and then when they're in Atlanta they do these pickup gigs, but they're all killers. But Anthony is the killerest of the group, and super nice guy. You'd never know what a player he is, but it was pretty cool having him as the other guitar player there. I guess I was the other guitar player, but and then Joel Edwards on keyboard, and I think he did bass also. But yeah, we sit down. The sessions always seem to turn into smooth jazz. That's for some reason where we always point to. They've all been instrumental, which is a lot of fun. I don't get to do instrumental music very often. Right, none of us really do. And yeah, they've all been kind of fusiony, outside the box. I think it's all of us running away from playing a shuffle and a 12-bar blues,
straight ahead rock beat, everything.
Yep. Yeah. And it's each time it starts with one. We'll just kind of dick around until one of us hits something that gets somebody else doing something.
Right.
So yeah, we got two songs done. They don't have names yet. Mike's going to name them as he produces the tunes. But yeah, we decided we're going to take the recordings, put them up on iTunes, and donate any money we might make to charity. So we'll be watching out for that. We'll look out for Soundhouse. Follow Mike Boutte on Instagram and on Facebook for news of that. But that was a lot of fun. That was very soul-filling while we were down there.
I can imagine, yeah.
But yeah, you guys, this week we've got Barry Richman, and it was a fun interview. It's incredible getting to talk to a legend like Barry that if you met him, you could talk to him for an hour until he starts mentioning and passing the people he's played with. You'd never know what a talent he is. And we were lucky enough. He played one of his guitars for us. He showed us around with his camera, his
little collection on the
the
wall.
collection, yes. And the one thing that stuck out with me in the interview was when he told us about his first guitar and amp that he was pulling in the wagon. It was a 64 Gibson ES 125 and a blonde or a brown face Fender Bassman, which is, guitar players out there know that's like the holy grail of rig setup, and he was pulling it in his like Radio Flyer wagon to his first gig.
His first gig, yeah.
So Barry's stories were great. We'll definitely have him on again. It was a blast getting to talk to him. But enjoy the episode, you guys, and we will see you next week. Right, welcome to episode 3 of Tales from the Gig. We are here with the fabulous Mr. Barry Richman. Barry, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Recovering from weekend gigs.
Oh yeah, that's what Sunday's for, isn't it?
Yeah.
For those of you guys, I can't imagine there are any, but those of you that don't know Barry and Barry's resume, he has played with just about everybody and done just about everything. I've been lucky enough to play with Barry on occasion and heard some of his stories. And when we came up with the idea for the podcast, he was a natural choice to get on as early as quickly. But Barry, as the world knows, you are a great guitar player. But would you mind giving some of your history? How'd you get started on the guitar?
Early teens, just like a lot of guitar players. Seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show,
right?
It's like amazing. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm way too small to play football. How else am I going to get laid? No, actually, coming from a musical family, it was really a no-brainer. Everybody, Dad and my brothers, they all played music, and it just seemed like that's what we do.
Right on. Yep. And how old were you for your first gig? Do you remember?
First gig was probably about a year after I got a guitar.
Nice.
And even before that, I remember going to audition, my first audition for a band, and I knew how to play like the lick Day Tripper.
Nice.
By the Beatles. So I went, auditioned, played that lick, got the gig. And then they asked me, what else can you play? And I said, that's the only thing I know. And then I got fired.
Didn't get it.
And it's still happening like that.
Yeah.
I guess I need to learn another song.
Or in a different key. You could learn it in a couple more keys. That's funny. There you go. Something like that. Yes. That's funny. My first gig was actually gotten with the riff from Twist and Shout.
Oh, okay.
The Beatles take care of us, and that was the only one I knew. So that was
my first audition. The first gig was a neighborhood pool party, and I remember getting a rope and tying this little red wagon that I had to the back of my bicycle, and there I am bicycling down the street with my guitar and amp in a little red wagon. Played the pool party, made $5.
Nice.
It was pretty awesome.
Right.
Do you remember what the guitar and amp were?
I remember the guitar was a 1966 Gibson ES 125.
Wow.
TDC, kind of like the model that George Thorogood plays.
Yeah.
90s. And the amp was a blackface Fender Bandmaster.
Wow. That's a hell of a first rig.
How about it?
I wish I still had those.
Yeah, that was my next question, was if you still had them.
Not those, but I've got a few more since.
Yeah, one or two.
Yeah.
So Barry, with your, going back through your website to get reacclimated with your resume, you've played with so many great musicians and had so many great musicians in your band. Do you have one that stands out as your favorite? I know it's a tough question.
Wow, there's too many. I mean, I could maybe narrow it down to 5.
All right, yeah. How about top 5 in no particular order? We won't hold you to an order.
Les Paul,
of course. Yeah.
Buddy Miles from Jimi Hendrix's band of Gypsies.
Yeah.
Allman Brothers, Eric Clapton, a great drummer named Vinny Colaiuta.
Oh, yeah.
Very great drummer, yeah. Wow.
And a few more.
Yeah, yeah. I got to ask the Eric Clapton story. I didn't know you played on stage with Eric. What was the, give us the rundown on that. I've never heard that story from you.
When I was 15 years old, and I grew up in New York. My dad was a very famous New York studio musician in the city. Played in the bands like for Johnny Carson's show and the Jimmy Dean show. He was also on the Dick Cavett show in the orchestra.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Dick Cavett was really cool, and he was one of the first late night talk shows to actually have some younger bands on and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So Dad called me and said, "Don't go to school today. We've got a really cool band on the show." And it was Delaney and Bonnie and Friends with Eric Clapton.
Yep.
Which he did for a very short time. I think it was after his Blind Faith and before Layla, sort of in between there.
Yeah.
And he was really was tired of being the star, and he wanted to just kind of be a backup guitar player in this situation. So it was the first time I got to see him play a Strat instead of his Gibson Les Paul or SG.
Right.
And instead of this huge wall of Marshalls like he had in Cream, he had like a little Fender Dual Showman behind him. And he was just kind of standing in the background. So I got there for the rehearsals, and the guitar player that played in the Dick Cavett show orchestra lent me his D'Angelico.
Nice.
Amazing.
Yeah. The Rolls Royce of jazz boxes.
Yeah. really, really nice. So I'm sitting there in the orchestra pit jamming along with them while they're on stage. So technically I was
That totally counts. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
I would look over at me and be like, "Who's this little 15-year-old kid with this D'Angelico?" And got to meet him after the rehearsals, but they, of course, when they did the actual filming of the show, it was just them.
Right.
But I didn't care.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, just to be in the vicinity, that's worth the price of admission. That's awesome. So that covers your first gig. What was your, if you can narrow this down to a couple too, because I'm sure there's probably more than one. What's your favorite gig you've ever played?
Wow,
Sure.
Well,
Other than the last one, whatever gig you played last night.
yeah, the last gig.
Yes,
when people say, "What's your favorite song to play?" I say the last one of the night.
Right.
But I remember one night I was on the guest list to go see the Allman Brothers at Lakewood, and I got called. My band got a gig that night, so I wasn't able to attend the show. And their show was in the middle. They had like thunderstorms, like really bad thunderstorms, and they canceled the concert.
Oh wow!
But they called me up and said, "Well, where are you playing?" And I told them we're at this little club in Buckhead. And the whole frickin' Allman Brothers Band came to my gig. And
No
sat
shit.
Holy shit.
That's awesome.
Wow.
And for the 200 people that were lucky enough to be there, they got the Allman Brothers concert.
Holy shit.
Wow.
That's a good one. Yeah. That's awesome.
Big notch on the bedpost, right?
Yeah, no kidding. What club was it, Barry? Do you remember?
I've got that on VHS. I need to transfer it over to an 8-track or something.
Send that up here.
Oh, yeah.
I've got the transfer stuff. We can digitize it for you. Yes. Or next time in Atlanta, I'll get it from you, and we'll put it under lock and key and get it transferred over.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see other stories. Silly stories. I remember as a teenager, we did my band did a little outdoor concert over. It was like next to this little stream, and when the other guitar player wasn't looking, I went over to his guitar case and filled it up with all these frogs we found. I closed the case, and then he opened the case, and all these frogs jumped out.
That's very biblical of you.
Let's see. I was doing a show with Colonel Bruce, and a couple of guys from the band Fish were in town, and they came and sat in with us, and that was really cool.
Looking here on your website, it says back in August of 2013, congratulations to my former student, Zac Brown. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Zac, I was in his band for a couple of years, and I was giving him guitar lessons because he was really a fantastic player already, but everything that he played was was kind of like a bluegrass picker. He was always down here, and I kind of got him up to speed how to play further up the neck and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Very talented cat. I wound up playing on his first album, and nothing happened. And so I'd left the band at this point. But then his second album, all hell broke loose, and he just overnight just became a huge star. Another story from the gigs. I did a concert with him. I was invited to play with him at a place called Chastain Amphitheater in Atlanta, and we were opening for ZZ Top, and it was fantastic. I mean, what a great venue to play.
Wow.
And so, but the thing was, I had to get to my gig after the show, so which was like up in Alpharetta, and so I'm like scrambling to get to the gig on time, and I get pulled over to get a speeding ticket. There I am. I'm in the car. I've got the laminate around my neck. It says ZZ Top, Zac Brown. I'm showing it to the cops. Hey, look, a half hour ago, I was just on stage in front of 7,000 people, playing with ZZ Top. And he's like just writing out the ticket.
Yeah, sure you were.
Sure thing.
I thought I was going to get out of it.
No, he's not a ZZ Top fan. Well, you have your guitar in hand. I would be remiss to not ask you to play something for us since you've got it there. Barry, for the guys watching or listening that don't know Barry or don't know him well, he's probably my favorite guitar player I've ever had the chance to play with. I've been fortunate enough to sing with Barry's band on occasion and play with him at jams and since I was 15 or 16 and learned more from Barry than any teacher I ever had on guitar just being on stage with him. But I'd love for you to play something, Barry, whatever your favorite thing, whatever your favorite solo guitar thing or anything like that is to play, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh my God. Let me think.
Put you on the spot.
Oh yeah. Put me on the spot here. I'm just going to randomly just.
Yeah, absolutely.
Play some stupid chords and see what happens.
Tell us about that guitar you're playing first.
Oh.
I love that Telly, that Paisley Telly.
Yeah, this
beautiful
1968 Fender Paisley.
Yep.
Used to belong to an old country picker back in the day, and I was lucky enough to pick it up when he got tired of people making jokes about a pink guitar. And it's great guitar.
Yeah, absolutely.
How's that sound on the clean?
Sounds great on our end.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. The great Barry Richman.
Yes.
The notes.
So, I think a lot of people describe your genre, and this is always kind of a dangerous question because none of us like to be defined by a genre, but a lot of people would say blues guitarist Barry Richman or classic rock guitarist Barry Richman. I've always thought of you as a true fusion player. You do a lot of blues. There's a lot of jazz in there. How would you describe it when somebody's never met you? How do you describe what you play?
Pretty much like that. I mean,
Yeah.
my roots are rock, psychedelic rock, blues rock, and but over the years, I've definitely incorporated a lot more jazz into it,
Absolutely.
and some country. Still trying to get the finger picking thing down. Yeah, it's really a mixture, you know, everything except opera.
There you go. Until they write a guitar opera.
Oh, well, I guess they did. Tommy, the Who.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess there's...
Enough of that.
So, some gear questions here for you. Do you have a favorite guitar other than the one that you're playing right now? Or is there a... I know a few of these, but I'm asking these like I haven't seen you. What's your go-to, or what's your favorite guitar that's in the stable right now?
You know, I try to use a different one every night just to
Right.
stay fresh. And there's 40 of them. So besides this Telly, I'm looking around. I see a 61 Burgundy Miss Strat, my 72 Flying V, I love.
Mm-hmm.
63 Gibson SG Custom, 58 Les Paul Standard, 52 Gold Top Les Paul. And then there's the semi-hollows, the ES 355s and 335s. I guess I didn't narrow it down.
I guess just whatever junk you got laying around, right?
Pretty much everything that I've ever bought is because I really, really liked it.
Yeah.
So they're all kind of favorites. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you have one that got away? Do you have a guitar you wish you still had?
Yes. It was a 1959 ES5 Switchmaster. It was blonde with like flame maple blonde. It was like a big fat hollow body guitar with 3 patent applied for humbucking pickups.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, the thing was just gorgeous, and I should have kept it, except I couldn't play it anywhere. It was hollow, and it would just howl.
Oh, yeah.
Feedback like crazy. You know, I wish I still had it because they're very hard to find. But I wound up trading it for a 58 Gibson Gold Top Les Paul.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which is definitely a lot more usable.
Absolutely.
For the kind of music I was playing. Let's see, as a kid, I had a nice candy apple red Strat pre-CBS. And back then, people weren't all that crazy for Strats. They were a lot harder to play than Gibsons. The pickups didn't distort as quickly as the humbuckings did. So, people passed on them a lot.
So while we're on gear, how about amps? I've always been intrigued by your use of solid state amps. Is that a creative choice, or is it to protect your back, or what's the... I've talked to so many people who would swear that you're lying, that you use a tube amp because of your tone. And
Well, I'd have to say that one particular PV, and I've tried several different models, but the 130 Special is the only solid state amp that I've ever used that comes close to a tube sound.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've used that for the last 30 years. And I got turned on to it by Jimmy Herring and Scott Henderson. They were both using this little black PV, and I was like, I got to get one.
Yeah.
30 years later, I'm still lugging it around. And but for other reasons would be when tube amps are fantastic. They really sound amazing, but the maintenance is incredible. And I'm playing like 300 nights a year, and every few gigs when you're using a tube amp, there's always some kind of weird noise, and you have to bang on it for it to stop. As you know, yeah.
Oh, yeah. With my twin.
Or if you move it or you bang the amp the wrong way, a tube falls out. They're really, really picky. But I've got a house full of tube amps that I save for like studio work or for like really important gigs. But that PV seems to work all those nights, which is really cool.
It's a killer amp, yeah.
Let me turn the screen here to see if you're able to see any of this.
The wall.
I know.
Yeah.
Can you see any of those?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the
Stop.
boogies.
Boogies. We've got the Blackface Vibroverb, Blonde Twin.
That's awesome. I didn't realize how many boogies you had. I don't think I've ever seen you play a Mesa.
That's what I was using back before I started with the Peavies.
Okay.
That would have been in the 70s.
Right.
And those particular boogies are those were made the very first year that he started the Boogie Company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I remember I was living down in Macon, Georgia, and Boogie sent one of their small amps to Dickie Betts of the Allman Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And Dickie was like, "Oh my God, that thing is so little and stupid looking that he didn't use it," because he plays through Marshall stacks.
Right.
You know? So he let me use his Boogie, and I fell in love with it because, first of all, I didn't have to schlep my big amps around anymore. But I remember, though, for the first few years, anytime I'd go for a gig, the band leader would say, "Well, that's cute, but go get a real amp." You know. But when I turned that thing on, they couldn't believe that thing was almost as loud as a Marshall.
Oh, yeah, they scream. Yeah,
They screamed. And I pretty much played them to death. I mean, and once again with the tubes, I was always having to get them repaired. You know, it's the main. It's kind of like familiar with the Jaguar.
Oh, yeah.
XE.
Yep.
Amazing cars, but half the time they're in the shop.
Right. Like driving a vintage Mercedes.
Yeah. Man, and getting amps fixed, man, it's getting expensive lately.
Yep. It definitely is. Well, Barry, do you have anything upcoming you can tell the world about? Any projects you got on the horizon?
Oh, let's see.
Gigging as much as possible?
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm doing 5 nights a week, so
Yes,
that's pretty steady. Let's see. In June, I'm playing at a festival down in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And it'll be my first time in Mexico, and it's kind of cool.
That's very cool. With your band, or are you playing with another band?
Another band called the Several Dudes.
Okay. I think I've seen you post online about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They got a couple of albums out, and everyone in the band lives in a different state.
Oh, wow.
I'm not talking like State of Confusion.
Right.
And stuff, but,
All musicians are like that.
Arizona and North Carolina and Florida and stuff. So we get together once, maybe twice a year, and do a concert somewhere. So they're flying me down to Texas and then Mexico or Arizona, something like that.
That's awesome.
And there's some other things in the works that I can't talk about at the moment.
We'll have to get you back so you can tell us once they're... Yeah.
And of course, I do want to do a shout-out to the great guys in my band, Joel Edwards and Bill Deal and Jeff Robinson and anybody else that wants to join.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the best, quite possibly, definitely one of the best rhythm sections in Atlanta, Joel and Bill. It's always a pleasure getting to play with them. Very
sweet.
Yes, sir. Well, where can the people find you, Barry? Where should they look for you on the internets?
BarryRichman.com.
Really,
that has the most info with the calendar. And, of course, Facebook has Barry Richman Band.
And the Barry Richman Band fans page, which is a great spot to go see photos. And
Yeah. But, either one is most of the information is the same on all the pages.
Gets assimilated to everyone.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, you got anything else for Barry?
Yeah, so come on, let's dig deep.
Let's dig deep. Any stories about drummers? How about that?
Yeah, I'll have to say, we were doing a show downtown, and it was in connection with the Atlanta Jazz Festival, and Lee Rittenauer and his band came to our gig after their show.
Oh, wow.
And their drummer is this guy named Vinny Colaiuta.
Yeah.
And for those drummers out there,
we all know him, yeah.
And we got him to sit in with us, and I have to say I was holding on for dear life. Where the hell is the one?
Where's the one? Yeah.
And I mean, it was just remarkable. I'd never been so amazed in my life. He was so good.
Yeah, Vinny worked with Zappa so much and everything, all the other projects.
Sting,
he's got a project with Robin
Jeff
Ford.
Beck.
Yeah, Jeff Beck.
Jeff Beck a lot.
Yep. Yeah, he, Robin Ford, and I can't remember the bass player, just put a record out last year that's very outside blues fusion type stuff.
Does Does it have like a Japanese name?
Yes, yeah, Jingchi. That's it, or Jinchi, something like that. But yeah,
I've heard so.
they did a half-hour studio concert for Sweetwater. I think it was.
That's what I
peddling
saw.
like Sweetwater's recording gear.
Yeah.
And you watch that, and it's the same thing. It's just a half hour of Find the One.
Yeah.
You're listening to, because all those guys are so, they're on a whole different tier than the rest of us mortals, and you're listening to it going, what the hell is happening right now?
I think their one moves.
It does, yeah. The one's just wherever they all nod at each other, and I would just wet myself and hide in the corner, I'm pretty sure. Well, Barry, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
My
We
pleasure.
appreciate it.
And I still have 100 more stories. So.
Oh yeah, we'll get you back on. Would you like to play us out with something? Tell you what, can we hear your intro to Little Wing? That's one of my favorite things that you do. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, playing us out, the great Barry Richman.
Thank you.